Now let's play some clips from His Highness, the I don't know what you could call this guy, the scofflaw, chief scofflaw of the city, the only one who violated any laws in the past 24 hours. I'm, of course, talking about His Highness, Mayor Bloomberg. And the king has now entered the press conference hall, adorned in robes, holding a grand scepter, wearing a wonderfully studded crown. His minions are following him to the stage. Visor Wolfson, the chief of police, they've assembled. They are looking glorious, regal and magnificent. And now let us hear what the king has to say.
At 1 o'clock this morning, the New York City Police Department and the owners of Zuccotti Park notified protesters in the park that they had to immediately remove tents, sleeping bags, and other belongings, and must follow the park rules if they wish to continue to use it to protest. Many protesters peacefully complied and left. At Brookfield's request, members of the NYPD and Sanitation Department assisted in removing any remaining tents and sleeping bags. This action was taken at this time of the day to reduce the risk of confrontation in the park and to minimize disruption to the surrounding neighborhood. Protesters were asked to temporarily leave the park while this occurred and were told that they would be free to return to the park once Brookfield finished cleaning. We are now ready to reopen the park.
Why are city sanitation workers working for Brookfield? I don't know. Maybe that's part of the contract. Maybe it isn't. I don't know.
But understand that there is a court order, which we have not yet actually received, enjoining us from enforcing Brookfield's rules, and so the park will remain closed until we can clarify that situation. But I want to stress
that is a lie. It's quite clear what the court ruling stated. Now, Bloomberg was aware of it at 9 a.m. when he was giving this press conference, and still, in violation of that court order, the mayor and the police kept the protesters and continue to keep the protesters from re-entering Zuccotti Park.
That our intention was to reopen the park and to let people go in and express their First Amendment rights to protest or their First Amendment rights to just peacefully enjoy the park and say nothing. In the future, protesters and the general public will be welcome there to exercise their First Amendment rights and otherwise enjoy the park, but will not be allowed to use tents, sleeping bags, or tarps, and going forward must follow all park rules.
That is His Highness. Let's play the next clip of his press conference.
We could not wait for someone in the park to get killed or to injure another first responder before acting. Others have cautioned against action because enforcing our laws might be used by some protesters as a pretext for violence. But we must never be afraid to insist on compliance with our laws. Unfortunately, the park was becoming a place where people came not to protest, but rather to break laws, and in some cases to harm others. There have been reports of businesses being threatened and complaints about noise and unsanitary conditions that have seriously impacted the quality of life for residents and businesses in this now thriving neighborhood.
First off, the community board, which represents the neighborhood, has supported the occupation. On numerous occasions, they have reiterated their support by vote. So who is he referring to? Epi? The Milk Street Cafe? He said the biggest problem he had was the barricades erected by the police. And for every owner of Milk Street Cafe, there are other merchants who say that their business has skyrocketed.
The majority of protesters have been peaceful and responsible, but an unfortunate minority has not been. And as the number of protesters has grown, this has created an intolerable situation. No right is absolute, and with every right comes responsibility. The First Amendment gives every New Yorker the right to speak out, but it does not give anyone the right to sleep in a park or otherwise take it over.
How does he know this? If we know that money is considered by the Supreme Court to be speech, because it is a mechanism to which speech is formulated and amplified, how do we know that sleeping out in a tent is not also a mechanism in which free speech is amplified? I mean, is there any doubt that without the occupation that we would not have heard these protests? Is there any doubt? Is there anybody who couldn't make that case? Is there anybody who would deny that the implications of this being an occupation, as opposed to a one-day protest, is that it has gotten far, it has facilitated their speech in a way that, let's say, money does for corporations or for the rich? Michael Bloomberg does not know whether or not that is, let me put it this way. Michael Bloomberg is not in a position to determine whether or not that is valid free speech. That's not his job. That's not his job.
To the exclusion of others.
There was no one excluded from that park. Ever. Ever, ever. In fact, that was one of the difficulties the occupiers faced. No one was excluded from that park.
Nor does it permit anyone in our society to live outside the law. There is no ambiguity in the law here. The First Amendment protects speech. It does not protect the use of tents and sleeping bags to take over a public space.
He just does not know that. He is not qualified to say there's no ambiguity in the First Amendment as to whether or not sleeping outside in tents in public space is a function of free speech. He is not qualified to do that. Among the other things that he seems apparently not to be qualified to do, he is not qualified to make that judgment.